Hi, friends. Hello, the world. Welcome back to this episode of Tools for Transitioning Humanitarians. And here is another tool that I have been discussing with so many of my clients, and actually today with one of my amazing clients as well. And the topic is pressure. And I feel like we need to really get down and dissect this concept for ourselves to understand whether we're using pressure on purpose, whether we want to use pressure, whether the things that we're doing, whether we want them to be done fueled by pressure or by other emotions, right? So that's why I thought it's high time that we looked at this tool that is maybe been negatively used or maybe positively used. So we want to be aware of how are we using it and whether we're okay to keep using it that way or we want to change. So I want to really get into thinking about for yourself. So I really want to give tools for you to think about, to understand for yourself what that is, what's behind that pressure, and what can you do if you don't want to keep using it. And I will also give you some exercises that you can do that could be helpful, like in the case of one of my clients. So first, let's get into the understanding of what is pressure, right? So how do we feel it and the consequences of it? Um, the way that my one of my clients was describing to me today is the pressure feels like we have like a big burden. Like I was telling her that maybe it sounds like 50 kilo of luggage that we keep carrying around, right? So, and she was saying exactly in that it feels like a lot of burden. I'm feeling like we're under this, like being pressed under that burden, right? Another client describes pressure as something that is very like pressing here in the chest area, right? Pressing as if like it sounds like a bit of a resistance, but also feels like something is not right or something that you're being pressed against, right? Like the wall or something. So pressure could be like felt in so many different ways. So you understand better, excuse me, than anyone else how pressure that feels. And I would like for you to get curious as to um, what is causing that pressure, right? So curious as to being very um, what is the word I'm looking for? Very with microscopic level, granular level of being curious as to what thought is causing that pressure and how can you remove that if you want to. If you don't want to work from that pressure, how do you want to remove it? And better yet, how do you not even create it to begin with? Right? So these are the two concepts really we're working with in terms of pressure. Now, don't get me wrong that there might be other situations where pressure is useful. And one of the situations that I was thinking about is pressure might be useful when we keep being in this mode of not wanting to do anything, not really wanting to go for anything, and just wanting to just keep being in our boredom or in our not so energetic state that we usually are. And then in that situation, getting ourselves out from that situation could be with the use of pressure, for instance, right? Or maybe another way that we can think of pressure, depending on what emotion that is, could be also helpful or used to get ourselves from the comfort zone to be uncomfortable. And that could feel like pressure as well. So that's why depends on what is the feeling behind that pressure, basically. Because I think whenever we're lacking the word, we just say it, oh, I'm being pressured or I feel pressure or whatever it is. And then we can get also very specific as to what that feels like. Is it feeling like feeling of inadequacy, feeling of uncomfortableness, discomfort, right? Or feeling of resistance or feeling of I don't know what, guilt or shame or whatever it is. So you may get curious as to what is it that if we like imagine pressure being a bubble or um, some kind of a cloud we could go into and have a look at what it is that's there. So, and therefore, we want to really get curious as to are we creating this pressure on purpose, or it's a pressure that just we feel like it's just there and we don't know what to do with it. And then if we keep just being in this state of we don't know what to do with it, then obviously we will never be able to do anything about it. We feel powerless under its influence, right? So that's why we want to get curious as to what it is that is behind that pressure or what is causing that pressure. And do we want to keep thinking that way? Do you want to keep operating from that way or not? So here is two examples that came up to me that I was thinking about when I was thinking about pressure and when I feel pressured or I used to feel pressured. And I will share that with you so that you have an idea of what that is, right? So one of the occasions where I felt pressure a lot, I think, especially in newer assignments that I went to, when I felt like someone was examining my work, or someone was judging my work or criticizing my work, and in order to do a good job, or in order not to get any criticism, or in order not to get any negative feedback, then doing all the things and feeling that pressure, right? So feeling that maybe it could be the jumble of insecurities mixed with worry and mixed with time deadline stress. So all of that jumble, I would call it a pressure. And then I got curious in those moments when I was feeling that, then what would I be doing, right? So the usual things that I was thinking about is that I kept pressuring myself in so many different ways of, oh, this is not good enough, that's not good enough. It should be this way, it should be that way, redoing things, doubting myself constantly, keep thinking like they know better than I do and I shouldn't be in this and all of these things, which then all together makes me actually be very judgmental and critical of my work before even getting it to them, right? So as soon as I think that someone is judging my work, then I start judging my work so heavily, and therefore I keep putting myself in that pressure mode so much. And therefore, because I'm so much in pressure, I'm putting myself so much in pressure, I don't even realize that this is actually a self-imposed pressure. And now maybe some of you do realize that this is a self-imposed pressure versus someone else is putting a pressure on. And I'm not really talking about that part, even though that could be another conversation that we could have. So that's why noticing for yourself, like the way I did it is like, and thinking of a situation where you feel that pressure and then asking yourself, why do you feel that pressure in that situation? And there could be a thought behind it, which is like in my case was I'm being judged, right? So, and therefore I put myself in pressure, under pressure. And because I was so much under pressure, then I started doing things and criticizing myself and doing all the judgment of myself. And in that moment, what I didn't do, interestingly as well, is I didn't really feel confident, or I didn't really feel like I know things, or I didn't really trust myself that I'm doing a good job, right? I like completely abandoned that bit, and then I just focused on pressuring myself, right? So that was one of the examples that I could think of. And another example that I was thinking about the situation is when a task is given to me, and then I and then there's a deadline, or maybe even there's no deadline, and then I keep telling myself that I have to get it done, or it needs to be done, it needs to get done, or whatever it is, and then I keep pressuring myself and then doing the same things that I was telling before, right? And then as soon as I realized this, then I was asking myself, like, I know that I can get things done. I know that this is the task that I will get done, right? The result is clear to me, or result is I know I will get it done. Now, the question is for me in that moment is how do I want the process to be to get things done? Because what's the point of pressuring ourselves, right? Even like to a point where we feel so bad about it. We don't want to be maybe even doing it in the end, but we torture ourselves so much. And then in the end, getting things done when we know that we can get things done anyway, right? So that's why the biggest question that I like came to realize that I really want you to think about as well is how do I want the process to be, but more importantly, how do I want a how do I want to feel about it as I go through this? Because one of the ways that we're uh, because the way that we're feeling pressured through that process of doing it is only one of the ways to get things done. That's not the only way. But because we believe that that's the only way, maybe, or we're so used to doing it in that way of doing it through pressure, therefore we just believe that there's no other way. So that's why here is another suggestion that I want to give it to you is like take a task, whatever the task is, like at work, a personal task, whatever it is, and then ask yourself, like I was telling to my client today, ask yourself, how would you do this task? How would you get it done without pressuring yourself? How would that look like? Explore it. If pressure was not available to you, how would you get it done? And then your brain may be saying like, well, I don't really know. I have to get it done. Da, 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 da. But if you just remove all the pressuring thoughts from the equation, then how would you get it done? And then compare the two tasks or compare the two occasions. One is when you have done it with pressure and another without pressure. And how are they different? Because whenever you don't do it out of pressure, you may need to trust yourself a lot more that you are going to do the work, that you are going to do the work in the time that you said you would, and also doing it without allowing yourself to pressure yourself unnecessarily, right? Because these type of exercises can help you realize that there are so many different ways, different feelings that can fuel how you do things. And if pressure is not the fuel you're wanting for your process, for your work that you're doing, then choose another emotion, another feeling. So one of the feeling that you may choose is determination, another maybe is commitment, or another is trust. Um, Maybe there are other feelings that you come up with that I haven't mentioned or I haven't maybe even experimented with. So you can experiment with so many other feelings that fuel this process instead of the pressure one, if you don't want to, right? Now, having said this, as I was saying, that when we want to understand really how we're using the pressure and what's behind it, is my purpose is really for all of us to be the people who not only understand pressure, but also understand that we are the ones who can remove pressure if we want to from our own work process, from our own creation of what we want to create or achieving the goals we want. We're also the people who don't even need to generate that pressure to begin with if we don't want to, right? But maybe there are occasions where you want to create pressure because that's necessary for you to get things done because you haven't really done any other way, or you gave yourself too much like time to be distracting yourself from what you wanted to get it done. So maybe you do need pressure. But I'm speaking to those of us who are like chronically or maybe most of the time are so used to using pressure as the only fuel to get things done, to be effective or efficient at work or productive at work, that we just constantly put ourselves under pressure and then start suffering from the consequences of it. So my client was saying that she now knows that certain level of pressure that she kept putting herself under led her to a burnout that she doesn't want to go through anymore, right? So there might be other consequences that you notice once you keep putting yourself under pressure, because that may not be really healthy or useful for you. So that's why the message that I really want to pass to you is, how can we use the pressure as a way, as a tool to use in the places that we want to use it to serve us, to get to where we want to propel us maybe to get to where we want to, if we find that's useful. But otherwise, really being conscious of being the people who can remove the pressure if we want to, or who can even not generate the pressure at all altogether. Now, let's speak to a little bit about the not generating pressure at all. And I think many of us haven't even thought about that it's possible that we can do it, because we're, I think, so much in the, oh my God, here is pressure and I don't know what to do, or keep reacting to it, or at most stopping ourselves from being in that situation. But I really want you to think about all of the feelings that we have. They are indicators of something is not right or something is right. So we just need to see which one is which, right? So that's why if we're feeling pressure, or if we keep generating pressure, and we want to get curious which type of situations or with whom we keep creating that pressure, right? And we understand then what thoughts that are leading us to those type of situations, or to those type of conversations with someone else where we feel the pressure. And that's why we want to get curious as to, do we even want to keep creating that type of pressure or not? So, for instance, pressure might be coming from feeling inadequate with certain people, or feeling maybe inferior, or feeling not good enough, or feeling like I'm not this and that, whatever it is. And if those type of thoughts keep creating pressure, then the question is, do we really want to keep thinking those things about ourselves in those situations, or in that relationship with that person? Or if we don't do that, then how do we even stop generating that pressure altogether? And then just accepting being ourselves, accepting being who we are in that moment, whatever that is, right? And then the pressure can help us then realize, this is when I'm not really being me. Now it's an invitation for me then to be me, and therefore stop generating pressure to begin with, right? So that's why I really, really want you to think about pressure is something that you can explore, you can understand what it is behind it, or how it's being generated, and how you can be the person who can remove it, or you can be the person who stops even generating to begin with, unless you want to use it for a particular purpose. Now, of course, this caveat being, this is for people who are really like in the mindset of exploring and wanting to see how to work with pressure, right? Maybe it's not necessarily useful for people who are going through burnout, or going through trauma, or other life circumstances where it's very difficult to reflect on these things, or observe, or have that type of um, like conversation with ourselves. So those who are going through that, absolutely, you I'm hoping that you're seeking assistance, you're seeking support, and you are using other methods. So that's why, my dears, I really, really hope that you will get to explore and understand what is pressure, what's behind it, why are you creating it, or what's the purpose of keep creating it. And if you want to if you don't want to keep creating it, then how do you remove it, or how do you stop even creating it altogether? And then using those type of exercises where you can explore, how could you do that job, get that thing done, be in that situation, be with that person in that conversation without feeling that pressure unnecessarily, right? Or what is the pressure indicating to you, and exploring and finding the answer to that. And then next time, you know how to remove that pressure as well. So if you want to work on this, absolutely come and coach with me. I would love to do that. Until then, thank you so much for allowing me to share my thoughts about pressure and how you can help yourself to remove it or to stop even generating in the first place, unless you want to use it for other purposes. Have an amazing weekend.